I am opening up a new channel called Lunatic Astrology. And whoosh! Hi guys, welcome back to Lunatic Astrology. I'm lost. So namaste. That's so serious. Christian Bible that talks about union, okay, is abracadabra. I'm here with my sister Nancy Lynn Lothian. Welcome to my magical unicorn video. Coming to show you something. I had this painting done of me. That is the end of the world as we know it. Thanks guys. I know there's a lot on your plate, okay? Love you. Mwah. Lunatic Astrology. Hi there. This is my first video in the series I'm going to be doing about magic. I use that word with a little reservation because it's certainly not something that you normally see in enlightenment and awakening circles. It's kind of woo-woo and certainly needs to be defined. But before I define magic, I want to talk about something called our center of gravity. And for me, a center of gravity within my being, okay, is defined as this anchoring point that inspires me and that makes me actually just want to be alive. You know, enlightened or not enlightened, awake or not awake, everybody has this center of gravity. And when we're in touch with that center of gravity, it's like we're living our lives from a soul-centric place. We're existing in the world as an expression of our deepest meaning and truth as the unique fingerprint that we are. So let's go back to the center of gravity concept. My center of gravity in the world was formed at a very early age when I noticed I was enchanted or drawn to stories of magic. And the first story that I remember, I was probably about 5 years old watching a TV show. And in the story, this mouse had gone into a dream, and little puppet mouse had gone into a dream, and she had taken some jewels off a tree. And when she came back from her sleep, her dream sleep, she told this to another member of the cast. Actually, I think it was the Friendly Giant, for some of us who might remember that 60s show. She said, look, I had a dream about, you know, a tree full of jewels, and I'm pretty sure that it was real, and I brought some jewels back with me. And the giant said, no, it's just a dream. You can't possibly bring something back from your sleep. And then she went into her pocket and pulled out the jewels from her dream. Because I teach about magic and synchronicity and miracles, I usually have a big smile on my face, and people think, wow, you know, she's like so upbeat and happy all the time, and obviously nothing bad ever happened to her in her life. That's not true. That's not true at all. In fact, it was something bad happening in my life that led me to awaken to the magic that I am and to the wondrousness of life itself. I was 39 years old when my mother was hit by a car and killed. She was only 66 and she was healthy and vibrant. And yet the day that she was killed was a day that was so magical and so full of enchantment and wonder that I knew that I was being given a message about what really matters in life. Things happen, things, you know, shit happens. I mean, shit does happen. And it's not what happens, it's who we are in the midst of what happens and what we're able to perceive or what we're willing to look at. I want to tell you just one of the magical elements of that day because there are so many. The morning of her death, I had been doing readings with clients, and at the time I was a professional clairvoyant, and so I had seen 2 clients that morning. And as I was departing my home in the afternoon to pick up my child from her school, from her daycare, she was 4 at the time, there was a heron parked in front of my car, literally a heron sitting in front of my car in my driveway. Now I lived on a river, so we saw herons all the time. But we didn't see herons stuck in front of the car and unwilling to move. And so I was like, that's an omen. And I unfortunately knew a bit about animal symbology in terms of I didn't feel positive about that omen. I thought, oh, shoot, they are farriers of the dead across the river Styx, or psychopomps. They have sort of an energy of, you know, helping a soul move past this life into the next life. So I was wondering about that as I drove away and shooed the heron out of my path and drove away to pick up my daughter. I picked her up and we went to the shopping mall because I needed to buy a birthday present for my mother. It was her birthday a month before and I had missed it. Like, that's so uncharacteristic for me to miss my mother's birthday, but I had missed it. And actually it was more than a month before, it was 6 weeks earlier. And I had this feeling that day, this is a good day to buy my mom a birthday present. I just have a really good feeling, buy that birthday present today. Leaving the mall with my mother's birthday present, which is its own story for another time because the present has meaning, I suddenly was overwhelmed by a flood of thoughts about my mother. Everything about her. The way she put her lipstick on every day, what she liked to wear, some of my favorite memories with her, that I owed her a few $1,000 that I hadn't paid back yet. All of these thoughts were in my head. And in fact, I even was calculating, well, should I mail the present with a check, pay her back her birthday present with the $2,000 I still owed her. All of this was in my mind for about a 20-minute drive to my home. Little did I know, at the very instant I was flooded with these memories of my mother, she had been hit by a car and had passed away. I would only learn this later. But the piece that stayed with me, and there are so many things that happened at that time before, during, and after her death that are full of wonder and enchantment. The thing that stayed with me was this: I mean, really? I buy a birthday present on my mother's death day? I mean, it doesn't get any more, succinct and profound and weird than that. And I knew there was meaning in that for me. I thought, this is the friendly universe and it's trying to say something. My mother has died, but she's also been born. Death and birth are just one continuum. And in dying, she is being born to something new. Birthday, death day, intertwined, intimately interlinked. And it gave me hope. I remember my mantra was, I bought a birthday present for my mom on her death day. I said this to myself falling asleep that night, looking for meaning. And as I was drifting off to sleep that night with this mantra in my head, I felt something touch my foot. And one of my mom's ways of connecting with me as a little girl was to always play with my feet and touch my feet. And I knew she was there. And I'm at my poolside and there's a floaty toy that's coming by to say hello just now. That's so funny. I was going to talk today about who is the magic maker, and it's a pertinent question for me lately to ask, am I sourcing from a deep, deep place inside myself that we would call quantum or non-ordinary and maybe even just true? Or am I coming from my mind or my egoic consciousness when I create outcomes or choose outcomes or seemingly want to manifest something? One of the things that I've discovered in the 3 years since my own abrupt awakening to true nature is that my body is not incidental or a bystander. It is a huge part of that process. Right now I'm sitting by my pool and I'm going to take a swim because I'm going to exercise this baby so that it is going to stay healthy. But beyond the normal tendency to want to be healthy, there's actually the question about, is the body a superconductor? Is our brain and our neural network and our endocrine system actually what the light of our true nature needs for it to flourish and for it to shine in the world, as opposed to a transcendent view of awakening, which says, I love my bird behind me, which sort of says, that nothing's real, the world's not real, the body's unreal, it's all Maya or illusion. I have to disagree with that. I think that the body is a part of reality. It's certainly not the totality. I love that expression that every upset is a setup. And what it's set up to do is to awaken us to who we really are. Everything in our lives has a potential to be a doorway or gateway to greater light. And for me, this upset became that doorway, and it catapulted me into a depth of self-knowing that I had yet to experience. And so I'm so grateful and I feel so blessed for what could be considered, a demanding or challenging or chaotic situation. I was on the airplane to my mother's funeral, already knowing that this pivotal event, I was an adult orphan, my dad had died before my mom a few years earlier, knowing this adult orphanhood moment was actually a gateway or a portal. And on this plane at 30,000 feet on the way to my mother's funeral, I heard a voice, and it said, "You must dedicate yourself to the mother." And I'm like, the mother, what is that? And I didn't really know what that meant, but at the time I understood deeply that having lost my mortal mother, I was now given the opportunity to, I was being given the opportunity to serve something greater. And to me today, the mother is the very, very deep connection point I have here with the feminine face of God. Thank you so much for listening. I am at my poolside at the end of the day, and I want to show you something. This, I believe, is a passion flower. The bees are all over, and they're all over my yard. And they're just so gorgeous. Oh my God. I mean, can you see how beautiful that is? Oh my God. Oh my goddess. All right. And I want to talk about wind as an analogy for our own divine magic making lives and our own deep awakening to true self. And the reason I want to talk about the wind is because, the wind is what our lives are really about. Now it sounds like a strange thing to say. We are completely immersed constantly in trends or dominant currents, let's call it that. And those trends or dominant currents that flow through and around and by us and come from us ultimately are there to serve us. And when we engage in synchronicity, which is what I'm all about lately, looking at synchronicity as a way shower for your own truth and for awakening, when we engage in synchronicity, we are flowing in the direction of the wind. We are like a kite being carried along by that wind. You know, instead of pushing against the current and against the wind. So right now I'm walking against the wind, and it's coming in huge gusts, by the way. I'm going to turn around now and try walking in the other direction. This requires a lot of hand holding of my camera, so if it's unsteady, sorry about that. But now I'm going to walk in the direction where the wind will be at my back should it choose to gust again. Walking with the wind at my back. It's a beautiful south wind in Vancouver, so I'm walking north. Walking with the wind at my back is what it's like to live in a state of flow, ease, and grace. The wind is taking me along. It's filling my sails. You know, there's another metaphor. I'm allowing it to carry me. I'm not pushing against it. There is some thrill and exhilaration in pushing against the wind. I will say that. You go against the wind and it feels kind of cool, doesn't it? To feel the resistance of the wind against your body and against your skin. But in life, when we feel the resistance of the wind of our true nature, it doesn't feel good. It feels like suffering. It doesn't feel great at all. So the analogy for today is let the wind of your true nature push you. And how do we do that? We follow the chain of synchronicity. We let those clues show up and we heed them. We pay attention, we invite them in. We record them, we tell them to friends, whatever it takes to create that feedback loop where those synchronicities show up more and more. And in showing it more and more, we are now being pushed along with the wind at our back as opposed to pushing against the wind in our lives. 10 months ago, my former husband and the father of my 2 children succumbed to a malaria coma. He came back from Africa. It was cerebral malaria. It was diagnosed too late. And the coma was severe, and he was actually in a state of kidney failure and life support to keep him alive in the hospital. And about 10 days into the coma, the hospital team was pretty dire from the MRI and the other tests, and the prognosis wasn't very good. And as a family, we were consulted, and his current wife and me and his children with me, and we were asked, you know, did we want to remove life support because we were at risk of bringing him back eventually if he did return in a state that he wouldn't be himself, and or he wouldn't be functional at all. Maybe he wouldn't even be moving, or he'd be on lifelong dialysis. So many ways it could have gone down. So we decided that what we would do is we would look for a sign, or particularly I was looking for a sign under this time of great adversity. And I said to my husband that the father of my children has to give us a sign, literally, that he really wants to stay here. And what happened was nothing short of a miracle. We removed life support on a Sunday night, and on a Monday morning, after being completely inert and not moving for, and doing anything at all for like 10 or 12 days, he opened his eyes for several hours. It was enough of a sign that the hospital team pulled, 180-degree turnaround, changed the entire plan, got the life support going, the kidney dialysis going, brought in more neurologists, did more tests, etc. He opened his eyes for about 5 or 6 hours, and then he closed them again for 4 or 5 weeks. It really was a miracle moment where he decided to show us that he was still here and wanted to come back. It took him a long time to get back. But anyway, he's coming to dinner tonight. It's Thanksgiving. He's walking, completely walking. He was completely paralyzed for months. Like after the coma, he couldn't move at all. He's walking, he's talking, he's, regaining most of his memory and his faculties, and, the arc of improvement continues. But the point is, it's about looking for those edges of the miraculous in these dire, difficult, challenging, and adverse circumstances, and being willing to engage a dialogue with the universe. Like, engage it on behalf of somebody even who is in a situation where they're in a coma. Say to their spirit, we need some help here. Give us a sign. And we really want you back. This light is so beautiful right now. It's the end of the day, so I'm just like noticing how bright it is in my face. It's like the contact of that light on my face right now. It's just an ordinary everyday thing. And that's exactly what your soul contact is. The contact of your awareness, your conscious awareness with the aspect of yourself that's not local. The quantum self, the non-local self, the non-space-time bound self, which we'll call the soul. And that part of you is available to you every single day for soul contact. And why would you want soul contact? Like, what does it do? What's it good for, Well, just about everything, okay? Just about everything. Mostly for right action. Mostly for that. It's also good for wellness and vitality and joy and peace, but it's also particularly effective for right action. So in other words, we move through the world, and sometimes we're impulsed to move and act in certain ways and make certain choices and decisions that come from fear. They come from a place of uncertainty and doubt and fear, and there are more reactions than actions. And then we have the capacity on the other side of that coin to come from a deeply centered, deeply knowing place and move into right action. And more and more and more, that is exactly how my life is unfolding. And sometimes when I'm moving with the soul contact and the voice of my soul, it makes no sense to me at all, let alone anyone around me. I'm like, oh, that's the strangest choice. That doesn't really make any sense. And it doesn't, but it makes sense later, when the big picture, pieces all fall together. I began studying astrology when I was, 23 in 1985, and I fell in love with it. It was like a memory of something I'd done before. I used to hand calculate the math for natal charts. I mean, seriously, long form, before I even had software or knew of software to do it, without me making a math error. And I also wrote some astrology books. I ghost wrote astrology books for Berkeley Press for a bit back when I lived in New York City, and then I was 1990, 1991. So I know astrology well, I love it, and I've been a student of astrology nonstop all of my life. And when I practice astrology, and when I have used it in the past in concurrence with my readings with clients, I've always used modern astrology. So here's the cool kicker part of my story. I am studying with Adam Ellenbos, who is a well-known Hellenistic astrologer, learning the old school Hellenistic, Mesopotamian, and Egyptian stuff that was recovered in a thing called Project Hindsight by a few astrologers who translated these very old, languishing, historical texts from their Greek language state into English, and we began to reclaim and rediscover the actual real astrology or primary astrology that was practiced before the advent of the last 100 years or so, in which we have what we call modern astrology. The reason my brand or my channel will be called Lunatic Astrology is I'm extremely keen to go deeper into the understanding of the lunar qualities of who you are. There's so much solar astrology out there with sun sign astrology, and there's a lot to be gleaned from the moon because, well, the solar energy, the sun, is your kind of soul's intention in the world. Your lunar aspect, like the silver screen, of Hollywood, the reflected light of the solar in what the moon represents is your material world, like the lunar landscape of your reality. It is like how does it come into matter, you know, that which you desire and intend? And so your lunar part is very important.
I grew up thinking about pandemics. I was a little girl who was always afraid that something was going to happen like this. Don't ask me why. So may we live in interesting times, you know. I'm not a germaphobe at all. Like, I'm not like OCD, but I am cognizant that this planet has a lot of people in close proximity, and viral infections, brand new, showing up like SARS, like MERS, and now like novel coronavirus are going to happen. And there is a very good chance that we will live in the next 30 years in a time of some serious pandemics. And we have to face that as a real possibility. But I think that this might be a wake-up call rather than a death knell. And so let's look at how we can work together as a globe, please, to not only heal this Mother Earth and treat each other with greater love, but also in some ways, how can we all work together as a team when we need to, like the world is doing now, and coalescing resources to support each other in times of crisis and peril. All righty.
I normally sleep 8 hours, and so that's kind of like a standard for me. I usually wake up naturally. I don't set my alarm. I usually go to bed at 10 p.m. Last night I couldn't keep my eyes open. I actually fell asleep sitting up at like 7, and then I wandered to bed at 7:30. I woke up almost 12 hours later. And when I woke up, the first thing I want to say is I felt a strange sense of permeating joy through my being. I hadn't felt so joyful for no good reason in a while. And I had a dream in the night, which I recalled when I woke up. And in the dream, I'm in my car, and literally have a car, by the way, that's parked down below, with a sunroof. So in the dream, I'm in my own car. There is a sunroof in my car, and a being is floating above my car with 2 magic carpets, actually. It's on one carpet, and there's an extra magic carpet for me. And next thing I know, I'm floating through the sky roof of my car, and I kind of feel like I'm being abducted, you know what I mean? Because I didn't really ask for this trip. And I get on the other carpet, and the being, who looks like a temple high priest, and a little bit like what I would consider sort of an ancient Judaic outfit. I don't know why that came to me in the dream, that it looked like what might have been an old priest, temple priest of an ancient Jewish tradition. And but that's how it felt. And then I got on the carpet, and the being said to me, "We are going to the house of God." And then I woke up this morning remembering those details. And of course, this is after 11 and a half hours sleep. I woke up at 6:30 a.m. and or a little bit, about 11 hours sleep. And I had no memory of what happened in the house of God. But I was also acutely aware that I don't normally sleep that long. So something really unusual had happened. And no, I hadn't been sleep deprived from the day before. So then I sat here at this morning window seat where I sit every morning and have my morning coffee, and I call it my meditation time. It's kind of like where I'm really quiet with myself. You know, I'm not practicing any form of meditation. I just always sit in quietude for the first hour of my morning before I check my emails, before I get into my groove, and just kind of just be still. It just is so soothing, and feels like natural. And what happened this morning is, instead of me just sitting in quietude, I heard a voice, and the voice said, what did the voice say? The voice said, "There is but one way to hear the voice of God, through the ears of the soul." And as soon as I heard that first line, I started to hear more. So what I did was I went and got my journal and a pen and paper, or a journal. I have more than one. So I went to get a pen to write in my journal. And for the next 45 minutes or so, I basically transcribed what I was hearing. And so the document is called The Age of Miracles. And it's really exciting for me to read what I wrote by virtue of what I heard. So I'll be sharing that with you guys as I go along, sharing what that's about. So I'm sitting at my desk, and my dad's spirit comes through just before Christmas. My dad's Mr. Ho Santa Claus. He loves Christmas time. I'm thinking, okay, he tells me not to work hard. Don't be a workaholic like him. I think, Dad, good advice. Haven't talked to him. He died in 97 for years. It was strange to see him show up, but I've got great stories about him. And I knew he hadn't reincarnated yet, nor has my mom. And so I do talk to dead people. And so he said, "I'm coming back soon, Lori." And I'm like, "Oh, thank Dad, you're reincarnating. Will, tell me more." "I'm coming back as your firstborn grandchild. I'm going to come back as Adrian, my son's child." And he said, "Soon." And I'm like, "Really? Wow." I think he told me the gender, but I forgot. And I think it's going to be a boy. And
That was just before Christmas. You told me that. And then I just found out, like I don't know, a week ago, early January, my daughter-in-law and my son came over for dinner and announced that they're going to have a baby. Now, I haven't told them that it's my dad coming through. I don't want to don't want to bias them. I want the baby to come out and like when the child's 1 or 2, I'll have evidence that it is or isn't my dad. But it's funny. I also didn't want to tell that to the mother because she's lost some family members too, and I bet she's hoping it's one of her long lost, like her brother passed away and her mom and stuff. And so, but I think my dad was pretty clear, and he said, "I'm coming back as your son's firstborn child," and he really loved my son, and they got along great. My son was only 10 or something when my dad died, and so it's like I could see why he'd come back. He used to call my son Adrian. He used to call him Boo. I can see why he'd come back as my son's child on multiple levels. So I'm going to be a grandmother, but I knew it beforehand. I knew exactly when because I got talking to the dead people again.
Now, I'm in my yoga gear and I want to do a demonstration for you because I want to show you what happened. So, first of all, this hip was damaged by a car accident in 2011. I was rear-ended by a taxi driver. I did physio and all that stuff, but what happened was, because I was parallel parking and I was twisted, my foot was on the brake, it caused some kind of damage to this tissue in the hip joint. And so basically I have lost mobility and range of motion, and I have hip pain in this hip, or I used to, because now it's gone. So a week and a half ago, on a Monday, I went to a shamanic event, like not shamanic, but drumming, didgeridoo, bells, whistles, meditation, 90 minutes. I went into one of the deepest meditations I've ever had. It was on that cusp of that solar eclipse on the Wednesday. So this is the Monday night. And when I came out of it, I was like, whoa, that was 90 minutes. It felt like 2. And I had a very profound journey, and I won't go into the details of it. But I didn't realize that something had happened beyond my deep meditative state. I think I changed some reality to a new one with no hip problems. So what happened? The next day was a Tuesday, and I went to see my shiatsu lady that I've been seeing for a year and a half, and she's a spinal expert and giving me all these exercises to fix my scoliosis, which is another weird thing. And at the end of the session, she said to me, "What have you been doing? Because your back is almost straight. You have hardly any scoliosis," which is the lateral curve of the spine. I'm like, I've been doing nothing. But I thought, piqued my interest, like, what, my scoliosis straightened itself out? I've had it all my life. Probably even getting worse. And then the next day, which is Wednesday, the day of the eclipse, I went to yoga. Now, the reason I'm not reporting this until now is I wanted to make sure it was true. I'm a stickler for the truth, and I wanted to make sure that what I was telling you was true and that this healing, weird reality shift lasted. So I went to yoga on that Wednesday, and there's 2 postures I can never do anymore because of my hip damage. And one of them is just a simple hip flexor exercise. Basically, I'll show you on my good hip. It's just basically getting yourself in this position. I feel like a yoga class here. And, and then putting my elbows on the ground. And I hope you can see this because I have no photographer. And I'm basically able to put my hip to the side and just relax down here and stretch out that hip joint. So on the other side, where the damage is, when I tried to do this posture, and I've been doing yoga for years, but since 2011, this has been impossible. I basically had to have a block. In yoga class, they have them, and you put, my arms up here, because this is my range of motion, dudes. I could get like this far down on a block about 5 inches off the ground at the most. Maybe I could get this elbow down, but this one would stay up because this hip doesn't move anymore. It's range of motion contracted, and it's pain if I try to push it. So what did I do? Holy man, my Wednesday yoga class of the eclipse, I suddenly went, and I'm completely friggin' down. Here, let me see if you can see what I'm doing. Like, I'm down, right? I'm all the way down, the thing that I can't do. Then, to top it all off, that teacher does pigeon that day, the other thing I can't do on this hip. Without telling a long story short, basically, if I was in pigeon on this hip before, this is like, a posture that used to be easy before I got damaged. I would have to basically put a block here to hold the position. But now I can go flat down. This is called sleeping pigeon. My head's on the ground. You probably can't see that, but I'm all the way down. And my little pigeon leg is tucked beneath me comfortably without searing hip pain and range of motion loss. So what I want to say is, has this ever happened to you that you have maybe shifted realities in a way that your body is spontaneously, miraculously, and completely changed? I have no scoliosis. I've got flexibility in my hip again. I have no hip pain. And the thing about it for me is that the only way this could happen is if I now inhabit a timeline where I wasn't rear-ended. how to use your dreams, and I don't mean like, oh, you know, Martin Luther King, I have a dream, or your goals. I mean your nighttime, I'm in bed, sleeping dreams. How to use those dreams for transformation. I find for me that I'm, believe it or not, despite the fact I seem like a very mystical type of person, I'm quite mental. I have a very active mind, I have a very good left brain, I'm very analytical, and make a great trial lawyer. Just don't cross me, I'll be right. Trust me, I've got it all down. And so when I get stuck sometimes, you know, even post-awakening, I get stuck when my mind loops on something and doesn't know how to let it go, or how to achieve a resolution or a closure. So just a couple of days ago, I resorted to one of my favorite remedies for the mind, or the overactive mind, and that is to resolve something in the dream realms, because the mind is off, it's out to lunch. And I was just sharing this with somebody recently as well, who's like a lot like me, whose mind is very active, and it's been very effective as one of their you know, ways to, you know, bypass that thinking brain mind self. So here's an example for me, and I want you to try this yourself if you're particularly mental and you can't resolve something in a quiet stillness or a knowing moment, or even, you know, just come to closure. Using the dream realm as a transformational tool is what I'm referring to. So 2 nights ago, I decided that I would use the dream realm as a way to achieve closure in a relationship that had ended in my life, and that I had not felt ended in a positive way, or in a way that felt clear and sweet and clean. Didn't have that namaste vibe, you know. It was really kind of raggedy and jaggedy and full of, you know, loose ends that, you know, didn't feel really good to me, actually, because this was somebody who was dear to me and that I had opened my heart to. And yet, in my leave taking of this relationship, and it was with actually a spiritual teacher that I decided to no longer be with, there was a lot of seeming acrimony and backlash and chaos around that, and not coming from me, surprisingly. Okay, so from some of the people who were followers of this teacher, a little bit from the teacher himself, you know, a little seeming angst around it. And I thought, that's not the way I end my relationships, or the way I like relationships to end. So I asked the universe / myself to please bring me transformational clearance and closure in the dream realms. And I asked that question on, I think, well, I'll give you the dates because, you know, it was January 10th. And then on January 12th in the dawn hours, I had the dream that was the transformative closure dream. And when I say dream, if you're a connoisseur of dreams like I am, you know that dreams are not just dreams. Some dreams are dreams, processing the junk of the day. Some can be precognitive. Some can be about, you know, the past. Sometimes dead people show up in my dreams, and believe me, they're really the dead people. And in this case, this is what I called astral plane contact dream. And I was with this beloved person in the dream realm and connecting with them and having that sweet, soft serenity of a true soul meeting, heart meeting, out of the body and away from the mind. Oh my God, yesterday, the whole Brett Kavanaugh thing was going down, and I am a leftist leaner, even though I'm Canadian. And so I kind of had that feeling of this dread that he was inevitably probably going to be pass a nomination as a Supreme Court justice. And I won't go into my politics, it doesn't matter. But the point is, I had every reason to feel disheartened yesterday, you know, in a down state. And I got up around 11:30. No, I got up from my table where I was working, my office table, yesterday at about 12:30 p.m. And I said to my brother-in-law, I'm staying with my sister, I need to go for a power walk. Because I was going to swim at noon and I decided I didn't want to do laps. So anyway, this power walk urge strikes me. And so I get, like, it's cold and rainy and everything else. I don't care. I get all bundled up in all kinds of clothes and get my walking shoes on. And I go for this power walk with music. I'm listening to my headphones, and suddenly, this is me, guys. I'm like, woo, 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 and I'm like skipping down the street like this, you know, and I'm dancing when I'm running. You know, I thought people thought I was nuts because I went down residential streets and then I went into the woods, and it didn't matter. I took about a 30-minute power walk, high-speed dancing thing, and I know I was a little like Mamma Mia, you know. But anyway, it was really intense. The point isn't that I can dance and run and walk and sing with my headphones on outside. The point is that my mood was so intensely joyful for no good reason. I just was flooded with joy, delight, optimism, hope. And it's not because of Brett Kavanaugh. You know what I'm saying? He just happens to be being nominated that day. I know there's a bunch of QAnon stuff I just found out about, you know, that this is part of the big plan to uncover the deep state. Excuse my unintended sarcasm. That's not my cup of tea. Anyway, it spiked yesterday afternoon. I think it spiked at 11 Pacific, so 2 o'clock, spiking, peaking. Eastern Standard Time. And actually, when I think about when I went for a walk, it would have been closer to 1 or 1:15 because I had missed my lap swim time at noon to 1. So let me know, did anyone else get this sense of utter joy and delight yesterday? Now, the other thing I want to talk about is UFOs. I'll just be very brief. I've had about like 12 UFO dreams in 2 months, literally walking along in my dream and looking at the sky and going, oh my gosh, they're here. Not any sense of dread, but great anticipation. I just noticed on Secure Team today, one of the channels I like to follow, guys, Tyler, I'll link to him below, a discussion about more of these UFOs appearing lately in the skies, these silent UFOs. Whether you believe that the footage he has on today's show or the show I'm going to link to is valid or not, it doesn't really matter. I guess the point is it true that we're having more activities in our skies? And if so, are they going to stay hidden? Whatever may be going on in the sky, these interdimensional vehicles or these interstellar vehicles, whatever they are. I have actually seen a UFO, I mean, in my life, for real, twice actually. But the first one when I was a child, and I grew up in Northern Ontario where there's no air traffic at all, like zilch, nada, none. In fact, I'll even show you where I saw the UFOs because I'm actually in my hometown now, and that's the window I'm looking out of where I saw them. And I was with my sisters on a mostly blue sky day. 2 sisters younger than me. I would have been about 10 or 11. And next door neighbor, boy next door. We were so excited. We ran in to call his mother, who was sleeping in her house, to drag her out to see them. But by the time we got back with her, they were gone. Now, what I remember seeing is 3 silver, kind of a burnished silver, like not shiny, discs in a formation with 1 in the front and 2 behind. No, it wasn't an airplane, and we don't have air traffic in Northern Ontario. There is no air traffic. There's no jets, there's no jetliners, there's no helicopters, there was no airport then in this area even, and they were just silently gliding below, like the cloud cover. I say below because eventually in the distance they went into a cloud bank, and you know, I stayed out to watch them when my sisters ran into to get the mother, you know, out of her bed or whatever, out of her nap in the middle of the day. This happened midday. Second time I saw UFOs was I was hiking along the Potomac River with my son and husband. My son was a little guy back then. He was about 6. And we're hiking. I lived in Washington, D.C. We're hiking along the Potomac River on these wonderful trails way up River Road. And I came to a cliff and I saw this. I was alone. My husband and son were behind me. And I was ahead, I guess, on the trail, and I saw this silver object. It was less of a UFO, like a standard saucer, and a little bit more roundish, but we didn't even have drones back then. Remember that. People weren't flying drone cameras around. Okay, so I have to date myself. This would have been 1992. And this very silent disc, but more bulbous, a bulbous looking disc, was flying silently across the top of the cliff and over the Potomac River. And it wasn't that high up, and it was completely quiet. So whatever those are, I've seen them in person, and I'm also an experiencer. I knew John Mack, the author of the book adoption. And I actually met with him and was one of the people that after his book was out, he was doing some workshop work with. So he was a psychiatrist at Harvard. So I've also had the experience in my dreams at night or in my altered states of consciousness of connecting with non-human entities that we could call various things from the Nordics to the Greys, and literally having, stigmata and all kinds of results afterwards on my arms, and have had abduction experiences or whatever you want to call them with corroborating evidence with people I've stayed with in their homes, and they've had experiences too. So that's a whole other part of my past and my history. I'm 56. The bulk of those things were happening in my late 20s all the way through to my late 30s. Okay.
I've had more than one out-of-body experience. I've told the stories before. I'm not going to retell them here, but they've all been blindingly accurate. Like one of the simplest ones I've ever had is leaving my body, nursing my daughter, falling asleep with her in my arms. Maybe she was 2 months old, and then feeling like I lifted out of my body, and I went floating up this hill to the top of this. I lived in a property on a river and near Annapolis, and there was a bowl of land behind my property, and you had to go up this big steep hill to a mailbox at the top on a road, a rural road, to get the mail. And in my dream, but no, it wasn't a dream. I was floating. I floated to the top of the mailbox hill, and I saw my husband and the neighbor talking, and I was listening to their conversation. And then I woke up and I was like, whoa. And my husband was in the kitchen. And I said, did you just come down from the mailbox? And he goes, yes. And I'm like, were you with David? He goes, yes. I said, were you talking about this? He goes, yes. So this stuff is real. And I've had more than one. But here's the thing I wanted to mention. When we talk about the moon in astrology, we're talking about our thinking, feeling complex. I think, I feel. You know what? Feeling and thinking are not reliable in life. Intuition is. Or intuition, as some people say from India and other places in the world. Intuition is. And intuition isn't a thinking feeling, it's a knowing. We don't feel it and we don't think our intuitive stuff. We can imagine it. You can use your imagination, because I get imaginal symbols when I used to see dead people coming to me. I could see them in my imagination, not with my eyeballs, and tell the client what they had messages for. Because I used to talk to dead people all the time for clients and was accurate. I don't do it much anymore. It doesn't really suit me anymore. But it's really also the knowing, right? Not the thinking and feeling. And the reason I'm bringing that up is because when you get out of your body, and I was out of an extended out of body experience, it lasted for a long time. I woke up with my fingers and feet numb, tingling, because I'd been out for a long time. I knew I had to get back. I had a feeling I got to rush back. When I was out of my body, I talked to my dead mom. When I was out of body, I did the X, Y, and Z, but I was gone a long time. But when I first went out of my body that time, I literally was greeted by a guide on the rooftop of the hotel in which I was staying. She came floating down to me, sort of like Cher in the Sonny and Cher era, with long black hair. I said, what's your name? She said, Tara. I said, hi, Tara. Nice to meet you. I know there's green Taras, red Taras, but I don't even know. It's just her name was Tara. And Lori has a personality that is extremely self-centered back then. All I want to know about me. I was in my 40s before my first spiritual awakening. And my normal personality would be, oh my God, let's sit down and talk. What's my purpose? What am I doing here? My marriage sucks right now. What am I supposed to do about that? Not my marriage. I was out of that, but I was traumatized by the way it ended, because my husband really did a sly trick on me at the end. It was really dastardly, and I was really traumatized. And I would have asked for advice on that. I was dating a guy I really liked, but I didn't know if it was going to last. And so I had all these mortal questions and the thinking, feeling turmoil of the character in the mind and body thing, like the thinking, feeling, and if you think about it, it's our thoughts that create our emotions, right? We don't usually have, we have like states of ecstasy and bliss and wonder and awe and delight. These are states of awareness. This is a state of our soul. These are causeless states. Okay. But we have feelings. I'm angry, I'm sad, I'm mad, I'm tired, I'm grumpy, I'm rage-filled, whatever. But you don't get those states usually without a thought, like, how dare you do that to me? Or I'm not worthy of anything, or I'm no good. The thought comes and the feeling comes. You don't want to trust those things. They're like mind parasites. I read the book by Colin Wilson, The Mind Parasites, back in my 20s, and it never left me. We are invaded by a mind parasite, and it fuels emotions that are negative. That's why I really don't like the trolls anymore. I don't even pay attention, because it sets me in my mind, body, emotional thinking complex, right? I try to straighten you guys out because I'm autistic. So I'm like, oh no, you misunderstood me. And I'm typing the explanation in the comments, and you guys are still attacking me. So I stopped with that. I don't bother with this anymore because it's not worth it. I want you to think about it. I want you to think about how thinking isn't helping you and feeling isn't either. It's the inner knowing heart, this place between thinking and feeling. And the point of the out of body experience is when you're out of your body, you drop it. You drop that thinking, feeling, mind parasite. It's gone. Because I've been out of my body several times. And when I'm OBEing, when I'm out of the body, my personality, character, essence, the thing that leaves the body doesn't give a flying F about all of the worries and the drama and traumas. And if you listen to near-death experience people, they tell you the same darn thing. So here's my story, the reincarnation of animals. I had an animal. Her name was Delilah. She was a hound shepherd blend. She was only about 40 pounds, and she had this beautiful black eyeliner and this and a white bib and white paws and the coloring of a shepherd, the white, like, the white, the brown, the black, like a German shepherd. Anyway, she died when she was 16 years old. I mean, that's insane. I like literally held her in my arms as she passed away, and she went on a hunger strike basically. And she was really tired of being around, walking slowly. And so anyway, I basically didn't want a dog after that, really. I mean, I got one for my daughter and that didn't work out. It did finally work out. But I mean, I was kind of done on pets for a while, 16 years, right? But about 3 years, 4 years later, not even, probably like 6 years later, I felt ready for an animal and I was looking for an animal. Wanted to get a Mastiff and I had a breeder, but there was a false pregnancy. And so it didn't work out. And then she didn't have another litter coming. So that whole thing fell apart on the Mastiff. And so instead, I went to bed one night and I dreamt about these little black puppies underneath a table in a kitchen with a child gate, one of those child gates that stretch out. And I could see the kitchen counter and I could see where the puppies were. I could see the child gate in the dream. And I saw these black puppies. And I thought that was weird. I had been looking for the dog and the breeder thing had fallen apart. And then I woke up that day and on Facebook Marketplace, this is back like years ago, and that somehow I got a notification about animals. I haven't been looking on Facebook Marketplace for an animal. And the photo was the exact, like the absolutely exact image of my dream. Like the child gate, the black puppies, the whole thing. And I'm like, oh my God, it's a sign. So I called the woman and said, I'd love to take one of your puppies. Tell me more. And she said, she said, and I was leaving. I was getting ready to travel that day and I was going to be out of town for 5 days. So she said, if there's any dogs left on Friday, this might've been a Sunday. I was leaving to go Monday. She said, come by. I'll let you know if there's a dog still available. So I went away and I came back on the Friday and there was one puppy left and it was the runt of the litter. And don't forget, these are German Shepherds, right? And it was a breeding project between her homebred female shepherd and a show dog shepherd that was 100% black. These were all black dogs. Anyway, so I bring the dog home and we named the dog Leela, the play of God. And my old dog Delilah, her nickname was Lila. So Lila was pretty close. And I brought her home. And the night that I brought her home and she was in my room in her little kennel, I had a dream. And I dreamt that my old dog came and just bounced in front of me. That's Delilah, right? And she bounced across the field looking at me like, hi. And I'm like, oh my God. And I woke up and the next day I thought, is she telling me that she's this puppy? So here's the punchline. This is a completely jet black puppy, okay? The puppy fur falls out like 2 or 3 months into a puppy's life and they have a new set of hair, right? It's a normal thing. And her coloring's completely changed. She ended up with the black eyeliner, the Egyptian eyeliner that my other dog had, Delilah. She ended up with the white bib and the white paws. And she ended up with these little black dimples on her cheek that also my other dog had. So she had the exact same markings of my former hound/shepherd mix who only made it to 44 or 45 pounds. This shepherd's siblings made it to like 80 pounds. She was the runt of the litter. She was a single dog in her own gestational sac. Anyway, nobody wanted the smaller shepherd there was. And she only made it up to like 59 to 60 pounds. She was relatively small for a shepherd. But she was so beautiful. And, long story short, like that was my dog come back. And I had her for 6 years, but she had a breed-specific tumor in a splenic tumor, and she'd passed away at 6 years into her life. But it was definitely, literally, my dog returned. And like, it's just uncanny how that stuff happens. And in so many ways, there were signs besides the markings of the dog. But I'm not going to go all into them now. But I think that, life is like that. And our dogs keep coming back over and over again and keep showing up again, as best they can in different forms. And Delilah and Leela are the same animal, and my dog has not reincarnated yet. Again, I'm not ready for a dog. I don't have space for a dog. But if she could and she hasn't reincarnated, I'm sure she'll come back again to hang out with me.
Lunatic Astrology.